Hello, folks. Omri here. I hope you're well. I've been traveling for a while, but I wanted to share this message. It's an excerpt from a recent keynote that I gave about the beloved community. Hope it's helpful. If humanity is not the choice, we all lose. Brother Cornel West, Dr. Cornel West says the common denominator of love is the unconditional, unequivocal commitment to the welfare of the so-called other. I wish I could do Brother Cornell's voice, but I won't do it justice, so I'll refrain from doing so. When I say so-called other, I add the word so-called because I don't believe there's an other. I don't believe there's an us, them, we, us. That notion is antithetical or contradictory to me. It's oxymoronic. I have a chapter in Reconstructing Inclusion that's called Rooting for Them Out, meaning I want to root the notion of them out, but I'm also rooting for we, for us, not for the other, but the so-called other. So there's a me and you, and we seek belonging in our uniqueness. That's absolutely true indeed. And the question is, do you want some to belong, but not all? Of course not. But when this happens, and it can and it does, some get to feel like they belong and others less so, but that's not true belonging. Othering and belonging contradict one another. They negate each other. So consider there's no true other, just so-called. Now, there's evil, don't get me wrong, but evil is just a certain type of laziness. As Dr. Scott Peck says, truly evil people take any action in their power to protect their own laziness, to preserve the integrity of their sickness. Rather than nurturing others, they'll actually destroy others to maintain their laziness. So evil exists. I'm not naive in believing that it doesn't. So in the creation of, in our determination to create the beloved community, a concept and an idea from the heart of Josiah Royce, the philosopher, from Howard Thurman, the mystic, and from, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King, who put it into practice and probably embodied it more than most of us had been able to see from Dr. Royce and Dr. Thurman. So, in our determination to create the beloved community, make sure that we see ourselves, hold up the mirror to yourself, do so with care, and also do it with care with one another. Make sure we're being very mindful that we don't slip into this laziness that says we want to be able to preserve what we want for our own benefit, for our own self righteousness, for our ego satisfaction, rather than the welfare of the so called other, rather than out of love. And I say that we must do this even when we don't like that other, when, if only for a moment, we perceive that the other, the so called other, to be racist or homophobic or sexist or transphobic or whatever ism or phobia that we might perceive. We still have to do it. Dr. Thurman says the religion of Jesus says to the disinherited, this comes from his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, love your enemy. Take the initiative in seeking ways by which you can have the experience of a common sharing of mutual worth and value. It may be hazardous, but you must do it, Dr. Thurman says. I had teachers, professors I disliked, bosses I didn't like when I worked in corporate. I even thought some of them might be a bit racist, at least a little bit. I had some people who didn't like me as a boss and didn't like me as an employee. With all of them, I have to give them grace because I know I'm flawed. And how can I not give grace to them for their flaws, given my oft inability to see my own laziness to want to hold on to my position and comfort, to want to make them wrong and me right because it feels good, even justified, because being right feels good. Do you like to be right? I love being right. It's one of my favorite things. It's not right that I love being right, but I love being right. We all do. That's what the ego, the subconscious mind pulls us toward. That's not the creation, however, of the beloved community. And therefore, when you feel like you're in a dogged fight with your feelings and desire to be right about them, when you see yourself unwilling to be influenced by the so called other, that's one way I define inclusion, by the way, a willingness to be influenced by the so called other, allowing sometimes a contradictory stance to enter into your own and be willing to be changed by that stance. When that mindset of not being willing or being unwilling to be influenced by the so-called other then dominates your consciousness, know that that's laziness. And it says, I want things to be a way that I prefer. We must sublimate this mindset, change it from one form into a very different form, transform it. When we find ourselves thinking this way, rather than understanding that an unconditional, unequivocal commitment to the welfare of the so called other is the common denominator, that will help us continuously, incessantly manifest the beloved community wherever we are. Because beloved community is both a destination and a mindset, a way of being. So we must reframe when we have this sense that we want to be right. We must reframe, readjust, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Little Ice Cube reference for those that aren't familiar. I'll go on. Constantly wanting to be right is bad for your health. In reconstructing inclusion, I talk about inclusion as any action that creates the conditions for people to thrive and for the organization that you're a part of or institution that you're a part of to be generative, to create value beyond itself, to create value even beyond those who are a formal part of it. So it's important that if we're going to create those conditions and create those conditions for everyone to thrive and for the organization to create tremendous value for society, that we move away from this mindset of rightness and wrongness and into a mindset of creating conditions to help all thrive, understanding this unconditional, unequivocal commitment to the welfare of the so called other, this common denominator of love that helps us create community. I don't just believe this, I do my best every day to live it. And I hope that we can, as we build out our organizations and build this notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion into the fabric of how things get done in our workplaces, that we can put our rightness down and move towards transformation, because rightness has never transformed anything and it never will. Care and love will. So I hope that was helpful. I also hope that if you haven't subscribed to this Substack, that you do very soon. Make it a great day. Peace.